Let's move over to some other matters now. And despite food inflation slowing down, South Africans are still feeling the pinch. According to research firm Eighty20, consumers are putting money away for rainy days, but mainly for food and funerals. It adds that people will not be able to manage additional financial shocks. Eighty20 Director Andrew Fulton joins us this afternoon to speak about this further. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Andrew. And let's maybe just speak about that. I mean, as South Africans, it's already difficult for us to save in general, but what Eighty20 is indicating that if we are going to be putting money away, it's now become for basic essentials like food and, unfortunately, instances of funerals. Tell us a little bit more about the research and those findings.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, we've kind of mined a number of different data sets, the MAPS data set and the FinScope data set, to understand how and why South Africans save. And yet the very worrying one is by a huge margin, the main thing people are saving for is food. Which is it's a pretty telling statement about the state of most people's lives when the number one thing they're saving for is food. The next after that, quite a long way down, is funeral costs, then school or education, and then sort of deposit on a house or improvements of a house. So it's only way down the list that you're getting into sort of more of an investment or the kind of savings that's going to reap a long-term benefit other than an immediate benefit.
Yeah, and of course it does indicate that, well, based on what you're seeing from the different data points, that South Africans will not be able to deal with any kind of shock should it hit us like it did in 2020, back when the pandemic hit South Africa's shores.
Yeah, and that really drained the savings of a lot of people who had savings because they lost their jobs or they had some financial pressures. And the sad thing is that it's not that we have this savings month that talks about how good it is to savings, and the majority of South Africans, it's not that they don't know how or they don't have vehicles or the ability, those sort of problems with saving. It's just that they don't have money at the end of the month. Like they do put away into burial societies, probably about between 16 and 20 million people put in burial societies, at least that amount putting into funeral policies. You've got a good at least 5 million people putting into stokvels. But once again, these are not long-term savings. These are not asset building savings. These are savings for a funeral or to pay for food or pay for sort of end of year festive spend. That's generally what they're saving for.
Yeah, and what are the data points indicating about debt, Andrew? Because a lot of South Africans, if they're not saving for food and other essential events in their lives, are now relying on debt to manage those daily needs. What are we seeing when it comes to the debt that South Africans are exposing themselves to, and if they're managing to service it at all?
Yeah, so we have a segmentation that we've done. We call the 80-20 national segmentation. We've divided the country into 8 broad segments, and we release a credit stress report on a quarterly basis that speaks to the stresses that those people are feeling in terms of credit. And the one thing we have noticed is that for the middle class, 70% of their income goes towards servicing debt. You think about if a bank's going to give you a bond, they try to keep it to below 30% of your income, and these people are spending 70%. It's hard to get any segment in South African society that's spending less than 40% of their income towards debt. So it'd be great if it wouldn't be great, but it'd be okay if income equaled expenditure. But what we're finding is that expenditure is actually higher than income, and that shortfall is made up with retail credit, unsecured loans, short-term loans, and people using those facilities in order to buy the things that they can't afford and often need, such as food.
Now, unfortunately, South Africa are not alone in the struggles that we are facing. It is quite a global phenomenon at the moment, Andrew. And I wonder, are there some low-hanging fruits that South African consumers or households could look at when it comes to perhaps not dealing with a shock in its entirety, should it appear, but being able to manage and mitigate as best as they can?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it gets down to life, really. You think about people who smoke or eat food that's extraordinarily fattening. There's this idea that we're never going to experience the the impact of these behaviors. And when you talk to a 20-year-old about their retirement, it's some faraway concept. So, that long-term savings thing generally doesn't come up. But I do think if you can teach people and talk about some, simple ways to save, one of the two pieces of advice that I received, one was, try to put your income away before you even see it. So the nice thing about a mortgage is it's a forced savings. The money disappears off your account before you have a chance to save it. If you can do that with some form of saving, that then at least you don't have the opportunity to save what you've earned. Another really useful piece of advice that I got that I'm amazed isn't talked about more is we have tax-free savings now that you can do via numerous different financial institutions. And what a lot of people don't know is they can open these for their children. So when your children are born, you can open up a tax-free savings for them, and you can put away 3,000 Rand, up to 3,000 Rand a month. And you don't have to do 3,000, you put a couple hundred Rand a month away. And if you put the maximum away, in 15 years, they'll have 500,000 Rand to spend. Now, that's obviously, only an option for sort of the upper 10% of the population. But at the lower levels, you can put a couple hundred Rand away every month. And after a period of time, your children will have some money for an education. And the big thing about savings for me is really it gives you choice. It gives you the ability to get out of a bad job or a bad relationship or just bad times in general, or even take on some great opportunity that might come into your life that you need a little bit of capital to kind of invest in.
Thank you very much for those insights. A very worrying picture, Andrew, but let's see. South Africans are known to be quite resilient, and I'm sure these are times we could potentially get through. That is Andrew Fulton, who is Eighty20's director, joining us to share some data points that have come out on what South Africans are saving for. The biggest two there are food and funerals.